Let's take a look at dividing decimals by whole numbers. In our previous lesson, when we were learning to use the standard division algorithm, the place values in the dividend lined up with the place values in the quotient. That same alignment is true when we're dividing a decimal number by a whole number. The key through all of our work when dividing is that we want to have a divisor that is a whole number. We always want to be dividing the decimal or whole number value by a whole number. As we were doing in the last lesson, if you need to use grid paper to help keep your place values aligned, please do that. That will also help you with your decimal placement in your quotient. We're going to start with 6 8/10 divided by 2. We'll take the 6 8/10 since that is the dividend. That goes under that division sign. And then we're going to divide by 2. The divisor goes out here on your left. And we're going to start from the left, working to the right, just like we did with whole number by whole number division. And we'll think about how many times we can get 2 out of 6. 2 times what is 6? Well, we can get right on that with 3. We don't have to, we can be exact here. So we'll do 3 times 2, and that's going to give us 6. And now it's time to subtract. It's that same process that we were using when we were dividing whole number by whole number. When we do 6 minus 6, we get 0. But notice the next thing that you see is that decimal place. So this is a good time to remind yourself that because our place values between the quotient and the dividend are lining up, we need a decimal right here in the quotient as well. Okay? So now we can proceed with our work. We can even think about the decimal down here. Okay, a little different from multiplying with decimals in that we didn't deal with the decimal placement until the end. You can think about this placement all the way through the division process. We're going to bring that 8 down now, and we're going to think about that as 8 divided by 2. How many times can we get 2 out of 8? Well, that would be 4. And because we've placed our decimal, the value of our numbers is making sense now, because this is really 4/10 times 2, which would be 8/10. We're going to subtract, and we're left with 0. So we are finished with this division puzzle. To check your logic, think about this. If you had $6.80 and you shared it with your friend, you would each get $3.40. All right, let's try a couple more of these. You can stop the video if you wish. You can watch the first example and then try the second. You make the decision as to what you need. I'm going to start with example A. We're talking about 7 5/10 divided by 3. Starting on the left and working our way over. 3 would go into 7 twice. And 2 times 3 is 6, so now we can subtract. 7 minus 6 leaves us with 1. We've hit that decimal, so we want to remember to put that in our quotient. We'll bring down that 5. We're going to think about that as 15. 3 would go into 15 5 times. Okay, just to remind you that 5 is in the 10ths place, so that was actually 5/10 or 1/2. So 1/2 times 3 would be 1 1/2, or 3 times 5 is 15 if you're disregarding the decimal for just the moment. And when you subtract, you're left with 0. You've finished this puzzle. The second example on the screen is 3 1/2, 3 5/10 divided by 7. We'll start with looking at how many times 7 would go into 3, and if we only have $3, we can't really spend 7, so we need to put a 0 here in this ones place. You know, we talked about that ones place needing a placeholder if we didn't have any whole number portion to our number. I'm going to go ahead and put in my decimal now, since I know that I've hit that point in my number. And then I can think about 0 times 7 and do my subtraction, but since I know I'm going to wind up with the same digits, I'm going to go ahead and start thinking about the 3 and the 5, or 35. I know that I could get 7 out of 35 5 times. 5 times 7 would be 35. And when I subtract, I get 0, so I'm finished with this one. Take a look at dividing 7 7/10 by 14. Now that's like saying you're going to spend $14 when you only have $7.70. You know you can't do that, so we're going to wind up with a number that's somewhere between 0 and 1 on this problem. So it's a good way to think about what your outcome should be. We're going to take the 7 and 7/10 as the dividend, 14 as the divisor. And we'll start from the left, work to the right. So the first question is, how many times can you get 14 out of 7? Well, obviously the answer is 0, so we need to put a 0 in that place since it's in the ones. We've already hit that decimal, so we'll put that into our quotient. And now let's think about the 7 and 7 is 77 for a moment. And how many times could you get 77, or 14 out of 77? I can get pretty close. It's going to be about 5 times. When I do 5 times 14, I'm only going to get 70, or 7, since that's 0.5. When I do my subtraction now, I still have a number left over. So it's at this point we need to annex a 0. That's where we're going to continue our work by putting that 0 in the hundredths place. That's really there, but we don't always write it. So now I'm going to bring that number down and continue my division. So I can think about how many times I can get 14 out of 70. Well, if we look back at our work, we know that that's 5 times because we just had that result on the previous step. So the 5 times 14 is going to give us the 70 again. It's in the hundredths place, so the decimal placement is good. And this time I subtract and I get 0, so I'm finished with this problem. So sometimes when you need to extend your work into the decimal side of a number, you have to annex those zeros to keep going. Alright, here are a couple of examples for you to try. So pause the video and then restart to check your work. Alright, here's the work for the last 2 examples in this video. Check your work with what I've done here. Notice where I have brought down digits to continue my division. If you have any questions about what you're seeing, write your questions down so we can conference and clear up any uncertainties that you have about the long division. I know you can do this. It's just going to take us a little bit of practice, but you'll get comfortable with this the more we work with this long division.